So, have you ever wondered what the single most important skill is in the entire world of data engineering? Well, we're about to uncover the hidden language that powers pretty much everything you see and do online.
Think about it for just a second. You've got apps on your phone, you've got these huge business dashboards that drive entire companies. What's the one thing that connects all of it? What's the thread that ties all of that data together? The answer is actually way simpler than you might think. It all comes down to one language, a single tool that sits right at the heart of how we manage, move, and understand data in the modern world.
All right, so let's get into it. We're going to start with the massive data problem that basically every company has. Then, we'll look at how they build these amazing systems to solve it. And finally, we'll get to that one language that makes it all possible. And, most importantly, what it all means for you.
So first things first, we've got to understand the core challenge here. The problem today isn't a lack of information, not at all. It's that companies are just drowning in it, a total tidal wave of data being generated every single second. And this is exactly where data engineering comes in. It's really the art and science of making all that messy, chaotic data genuinely useful. I absolutely love this analogy. If data is water, then data engineers are the people who build the pipes, the entire plumbing system to get it where it needs to go, all clean and ready to use. And just look at all the different kinds of raw data we're talking about. It's everything. Every single click on a website, every transaction, every customer order. All of this stuff is raw. It's often messy, and it's scattered across totally different systems. It's pure chaos, really. So how in the world do you tame that chaos? Well, you're definitely not going to do it by hand. You build something called a data pipeline, an automated system designed specifically for this job.
Let's just walk through a really simple example. So, say you place an order on an app. First, that data is extracted from the app's database. Next, it's transformed, which is just a fancy way of saying it gets cleaned up and organized. And finally, it gets loaded into a central storage place, usually a data warehouse, where it can be analyzed to build all those reports and dashboards.
Okay, so that transform step we just mentioned, that's where a ton of the magic happens. And there are a couple of key ways to think about how and when you actually clean the data as it's moving through the pipeline. What's really interesting here is the difference between what we call ETL and ELT. For a long, long time, ETL was the standard. You'd extract the data, clean it up, and then load it into storage. But now, with powerful cloud tools, ELT is way more common. You just load all the raw stuff in first, and then you transform it later, right inside the warehouse. It's a game changer. And this brings up another key choice: timing. Are you going to process data in big chunks or batches, maybe once a day for a daily sales report? Or are you going to process it instantly in a constant stream, like for detecting credit card fraud the very second the transaction happens? Both are super important. Okay, so we've collected the data, we've processed it, the pipeline did its job. But where does all that clean, useful data actually end up living? Well, it mainly goes into one of two places. A data warehouse is like a perfectly organized shelf at the grocery store. Everything is structured, clean, and ready to be used for reports. A data lake, though, that's more like a giant storage unit where you just throw everything. Raw data, messy data, structured data, you name it. You just keep it all for some potential future project. So we've talked about the problem, the pipeline, the processing, the storage. Now we're finally getting to the absolute core of it all. The one language that makes every single one of these steps actually work. Because, it's one thing to talk about these big ideas, but how do engineers actually talk to the databases? How do they tell a system to pull this information or to clean it up in a certain way? They use SQL. It stands for Structured Query Language, and it is the universal language for talking to databases. Period. Doesn't matter if you're pulling data, cleaning it, mashing it together, or running some wild calculation. You are using SQL to do it. So what does that actually look like? How can a few simple lines of this language end up driving these huge, multi-million-dollar business decisions? Let's look at this simple query right here. Even if you have never seen SQL before in your entire life, you can probably guess what this is doing, right? It's basically saying, hey database, select the city and add up all the sales from the orders table. Oh, and group the results for me by city. It's just a direct, logical question. And boom, here's the result. That one little line of code instantly becomes a clear business insight. Just like that,
The company knows exactly which cities are its top performers. I promise you, every chart, every dashboard you have ever seen has a query just like this one working its magic behind the scenes.
So now that we've gone through this whole journey, from a total mess of raw data all the way to a clean, insightful chart, what's the big takeaway? What should you remember if you're at all interested in data?
The most crucial point is this, and it's put perfectly here. SQL isn't just another tool in the toolbox. No way. It is the absolute foundation. If you're serious about a career in data, it is the place you have to start. So let's just do a quick recap. We saw how data engineering builds these automated pipelines to turn messy raw data into real insights. We talked about different ways to process and store that data. But what's the one constant, the one thing that connects everything? Yep, it's SQL. It underpins every single step. You always hear that phrase, right? Data is the new oil. Well, oil on its own is pretty useless until you have a refinery. Learning SQL, that's your first step to becoming one of the people who builds that refinery, turning all that raw potential into real, tangible value.